Hi, I'm Bill Thomas.
And I'm Stephanie Allison, and welcome to Classic Drive TV.
This week's Motorsports Report, we're at the Orange Dragstrip Reunion at the Sterling Airport in Sterling, Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us. Stephanie, you've been at a number of these Orange Dragstrip reunions. Tell me about your thoughts about them.
So this was my third Orange Dragstrip reunion this year, and it was an awesome show. They had 110 race cars that were just raring to go. They had awesome races and about 500 show cars. It was great to be able to walk the fields and see all of the cars that were there that people have either restored or made into race cars, kind of like the Classic Drive 55, and it was just an absolutely awesome day.
I know this is my third one going back to 2013, and I've watched it grow. You've been involved a lot more. Just what are your impressions about the growth of the event and how people have really embraced it over the years?
Well, the Orange Dragstrip Reunion is a family-run show. I mean, John's out there all the time with Kim, and his parents run the t-shirt booth. It's absolutely awesome. John
Durfee and his wife Kim, they were the driving proponents behind this entire show. Of course, with a lot of help, some great sponsors too. But you got yourself some action. You were out there on the track, actually flagging not only the test and tune session, but some of the eliminations. What are your thoughts about being out there right in the middle?
Being out there right in the middle is such an adrenaline rush because you're feeling the pulse from all of these engines. You're smelling the burnt rubber and, you know, the diesel and all of that stuff that goes into it.
Yes, there was a diesel truck.
Yeah, we had to duck and cover for that one, but that was a fun time. But just being able to be right there and you're pointing at each of the racers and they're acknowledging you, to be able to say, I'm ready, let's do this, and then being able to pull that green flag up and having them fly right by is just incredible. It's such an adrenaline rush, and I've been doing the flagging since 2013. That was my first one, and I was only out there for a little bit, but I got the bug and I can't get rid of it.
I know as a spectator for the most part, we did a lot of walking around and watching. You were really involved. The ability to have that control and just the concentration that you're seeing in the driver's eyes. Yeah, we're there to have fun. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows it's more fun when you win. Mm-hmm. But that concentration and the pressure that you must have been feeling to make sure everything went right, because you don't want to cost somebody a win, flinching. There's a lot going on in a little bit of time there.
Absolutely. You've got to be so in tune with your own muscle movements of they're waiting for, everybody always holds the green flag in your left hand. So they're watching as soon as the right one goes up. They're waiting for even a tenth of a bicep to be able to jump the gun just a little bit. So being able to rip your arm up in one fluid motion, it's a lot of work. It is. I know I was hurting for a couple days there.
Well, let's see how much work you put into it. Let's go out to the track and check out some of the racing. we're back from the track. Not only can racing be a competitive event, but it also can become a very fun family affair.
We caught up with a family at Orange Dragstrip Reunion, Dennis and Jimmy Toll. They brought a really interesting car to the races this year. They brought a station wagon.
When we were in high school, we used to go up to New England Dragway or Epping. There were still some areas around that you could actually do street racing as well. It was not uncommon, where you could go to a certain road that was, not a lot of traffic, and no one would hassle you. We actually found the car in 2006 on eBay. It was listed for sale on eBay. It had sat since the late 70s in a garage and was basically untouched. And we went up to Ballston Lake, New York, and purchased the car and trailered it home. And you're actually looking at the same exact condition right now as it was when we picked it up. Absent a seized 390 Ford motor that was in it. The motor that was in it had sat for almost 30 years, and obviously it was seized up, and despite all our efforts, we couldn't get the engine to turn free, so we removed it and put another 390 in it. I think it's a great hobby, and my thing, and I've always stressed to him, is there's a time and a place for it, and it's great to have a fast car, but a fast car and the way it should operate is where it belongs, on a track, not on the roads and not on the streets. And I think he's definitely received my message, I should say, with regard to that. So
cars in general, it's just all of an influence from my dad. Like ever since I was little, he was pushing me around in a stroller at car shows, and I've always been by his side through everything. So he kind of influenced me through cars.
To be honest with you, we were just at a track in Pennsylvania last week, or the week before, and he gave me a few tips, and at the same time I'm trying to give him a few tips.
This is one of the first that we've done together, but throughout the years we've been always working around with cars, fixing them, playing with them, but this was our first real legitimate race car build that we've done together.
Orange, in my opinion, is probably it doesn't get any better as far as drag racing. You just, the atmosphere, the cars, the people, to me it's probably the premier race for this area all year long. It seems to have like a little nostalgic vibe, and you see cars that actually ran at Orange Dragway, and you talk to people that actually raced up there. It doesn't get any better, in my opinion.
65 Daytona Coupe. Don't see too many of those Daytona Coupes around.
Stephanie, what a great story.
Absolutely, can't get much better than that. And we'll be right back with more, right after a word from our sponsor, Evans Waterless Coolant.
Probably the most common question I get asked is, will Evans make my engine run too hot? The answer is no. Because Evans has such a higher boiling point and not create that steam vapor pressure internally, you're always going to have a constant liquid to metal contact to draw heat. Once a water-based coolant boils, it turns to steam. Steam's going to force the coolant out of the passages, and the metals will have no way to dissipate heat at that point in time. Your coolant system has to have coolant in there in order for it to work. Limp mode is typically based off of a water-based coolant. The reason being, when the engine gets too hot, the water's going to start to boil. So limp mode kicks in, reduces your engine power, so it reduces heat, and it will allow your cooling system to catch up to itself. Because Evans coolant has such a higher boiling point and it's always going to remain in a liquid state, even if you hit the limp mode, you're going to be able to still run safely and efficiently.
Welcome back. What an awesome day for racing. Classic Drive was able to bring their own Classic Drive 55 this year. We'll take a look at that in just a few minutes. But first, Phil, you got a chance to talk to another father-son race team.
Yeah, the Langs from down Barnstable, Mass. They are father-son who regularly compete against each other. Classic Drive Television had a chance to catch up with them before the race.
With our cars, we want to race cars that look like ours.
Right, that's part of it. And nowadays, anything that's a lot of the nostalgia races, you start seeing the Fox body Mustangs, Monte Carlos, Malibus. They'll go, oh well, anything pre-1979 or 1981, and it's like, that's not nostalgia racing. That's bracket racing from 20 years ago. We want to go to an event like Orange and show up, and I want to run other straight axle cars. I want to run, your rails or your altereds, which is always a handful of there. It's nice to see guys who are coming out and having their Novas, their Chevelles, their Mustangs, your Mopars,
Getting beat by Volkswagen.
Getting beat by Volkswagen bugs, because that's happened. That was a good year. So that's what kind of brought us to this event, and it's comfortable. You go there, you hang out, you throw your car on the trailer, you're not showing up having to worry about every little thing. 330 feet, if my car can't survive 330 feet, I've done something wrong. It's a good event, and honestly, it's one we look forward to every year. The cars that we're bringing to Orange, my 51 Henry J, which is behind the camera here, big block tunnel ram, 427 cubic inch, 13-to-1 compression, turbo 350, old Pontiac rear, low 10-second car. I, again, bought it in 2008 or 9, or no, 4 or 5. Got it on the track by 06. I've had it ever since. It's been a great car. It's been with me now 15 years. It's never going anywhere. And then his car, your car, you tell your story on it, what it is.
I saw it, I fell in love with it. It's a 47 Fiat 1100. Very, very rare car. It kind of looks like a Ford Anglia, but it's actually a 4-door. There can't be 10 of those in the country, maybe.
Well, they weren't supposed to be here. They were never imported.
It's a teeny car. It's made for very small Italian people. But it's got a 383 stroker engine in it, 14.5-to-1 compression, turbo 400, Olds Pontiac rear end with 488 gears. It runs 10-1. It's a lot of fun.
A lot of work.
Bring it to the track. I use a trans brake, and I like to do big wheel stands.
I think the airport shows. We have a show going on right now locally down the way in Chatham. It's at an airfield, and it's just a static display show, and we don't go because it's boring. It's just they put planes and cars out on the field and call it a day.
We normally don't go to car shows because
we're not car show people.
We're not car show people.
It's nice to have a little bit more of an event. Like I said, it'd be really cool. I'm surprised this hasn't caught on more, to be honest. I'm surprised you don't see a lot more shows in the just across the country where they're doing the little.
Do it in parking lots.
They could do it in large parking lots. You do a little go-off thing, or 330-foot drag. I mean, granted, I know the logistics of it are hard, and we got a really good. John's got a really good story going with the Orange Drag Reunion. There's a lot of provenance in history at this point.
another awesome family story from the Orange Dragstrip Reunion.
That's what it's all about, Stephanie.
Stay tuned for more. We'll be right back right after this.
I'm Eli English, and you're watching Classic Drive Television.
I'm often asked, Chris, which is the best coolant to use for my power sports machine? Ideally, what we're going to want to use is the Evans Power Sports coolant, which is your ethylene glycol. Now, if you run into that situation where ethylene glycol is not approved, but the propylene glycol is approved, you can go right to our NPG product. NPG is also a non-toxic, so it is environmentally safe. When you're on those track days, though, and all the glycols are banned, what you can use is our Evans Track Water. The track water is simply just water with inhibitors that's going to help lower the surface tension of the water, and it's also going to protect against corrosion. It's not an antifreeze by any means, so it could potentially freeze on you, and it will have a much lower boiling point. It's always best to check with your track or series to see what is approved and what will be your best application.
Hot rodding actually started a lot earlier than people think. A lot of people were trying to make their cars go faster right from the beginning. Since the automobile was really conceived, believe it or not, they were always racing them against other cars just to see who was faster, who had a better product back in the early teens and into the 20s. And then aftermarket parts became available to make basically Model Ts go faster, just because from the factory they weren't really all that great, and there's always been a need for speed. So it kind of started there, and then in the 30s it grew, and it really began to take off in the 40s, right before World War II. And then once World War II ended, a lot of GIs came back and took the skills that they learned from being in the military and applied it to building cars. And so that's when the hot rodding and drag racing as we know it kind of took off. But as I said before, it was really a much earlier thing. It was always there. It just that the availability of parts was more prevalent after World War II. So that's really how it all kind of started. And they did, they started out with dry lakes racing, and then obviously there was people street racing. And then in the 50s, they decided to do the NHRA, which was Wally Parks in California decided he wanted to do this, make drag racing safe. And he traveled around the country with a drag safari. It was basically a 50s station wagon with a camper behind it. And they went to all the racetracks to promote track safety and car safety. And that's when they really got into, teching all the cars in. And that's what really led up to drag racing as we know it today. Obviously, back then it was more of a grassroots type of thing where people were building their own cars in their own garages with their own two hands, and unlike today where it gets really high tech with computers and stuff like that. But as a whole, it's always been there. Hot rodding's always been there. Drag racing's always been there. There was even one point in the 30s where they actually raced a car against a horse, just to see who was faster. And actually, that car's been found and restored. So, but yeah, it's an interesting kind of story that goes along with it.
We're here in the Evans Waterless Coolant Solutions booth with Chris Siebes. Chris, we're got some vehicles out here at the Orange Dragstrip Reunion running your coolant, and I know you're promoting the coolant. We've had a lot of people buy your booth today, giving away a lot of items related to your product, and we're going to be giving away some contingency awards to our class winners. But let's hear a little bit about your product. I know it's getting talked about a lot here, but what exactly is Evans Waterless Coolant?
Well, what we are, it's still a liquid form. It's just a blend of glycols with inhibitors that allow it to work without water. It's going to be able to raise the boiling point of the coolant, which is 375 degrees. So that way it's always going to be able to stay in a liquid form, always be stable. You're always going to have a consistent liquid to metal contact and transfer heat at those temperatures where water's going to boil and fail. And as we all know, once water boils, it turns to steam, builds pressure, pushes it out of the system, and it's all over from there. So it's perfect for these guys drag racing today. They're doing the hot laps. It's a nice, beautiful day. It's hot out, though, so they're running hot. And then some guys here came over and said, well, we like it for the corrosion protection. So no water means no corrosion, no electrolysis. Helps preserve my ride, and that's the way we like it. So.
Well, that's what it's all about. You know, just to dive a little bit more into the science of it, you know, I was talking to you earlier, talked about how it reduces the pressure in your coolant system, and one of your reps was telling me you can actually take the radiator cap off without getting scalded. That's how much it controls the pressure, and it doesn't force out the coolant, which helps to maintain that consistency in your coolant temperatures.
Exactly. Yeah, we did a skit one time. We were towing a vehicle in Death Valley. We had a trailer, pulling a trailer up this hill, and we get to the top of the hill, this big long climb, and we ended up pulling the cap. It was about 250 degrees, and everyone's standing back and ready for the explosion, but it was just like a little soda can pop, and that's about it. So, because there's nothing there to boil to create the pressure. It's still going to build some pressure. You're talking 4 to 5 pounds at the most, because it's still fluid. It's going to have heat expansion. You have a water pump pushing it and stuff, but not enough to hurt you by any means. So
I see a number of different products on the table here, Chris. Just show us a little bit of what you got here. I see a display of your liquid here.
We got the display just to show people
what it looks like. But talk a little bit about your product and what the different containers are and what they do.
Well, so we'll start with the prep fluid here. The prep fluid is a way to flush the system to get it ready for the coolant. What it will do is absorb and dilute down all the residual water and coolant that's left in there. Once you've gone through that step, then you can add our high-performance coolant. The high-performance coolant we use mostly for the car applications, light-duty trucks, that kind of stuff there. The white bottles you see here, this is for our power sports applications, dirt bikes, ATVs, UTVs, slightly thinner in viscosity, and it also comes in a half-gallon form rather than the full gallon. Most motorcycles don't take more than a half a gallon, so it kind of saves them a little bit more cost effective, I guess, if you will, for those guys. So, but other than that, yeah, it's pretty much straightforward. There's only a few product lines, not much to choose from. So,
but what you do have, it really provides a good service to the drag racing community, specifically the NHRA is solidly behind your product. And just talk about a little bit about the benefits of that. Why is the NHRA so solidly behind you in this type of product?
Well, the main reason they like our product is that the guys can run safely and efficiently with it, and it's not going to boil out and spill on the track. If it does get on the track, it's going to be the likelihood of a wreck. It still is slippery. They still have to clean it up, but in the event that it does get on there, most likely they're probably going to be cleaning up oils or something else anyways. But they mainly like it for the fact that it's not going to boil over. The guys like it because they can maintain a consistent temperature throughout the day, tune the car to that temperature, and not have any worries about it boiling out on them.
So as far as the consumer side of the business, good if you're towing, living in warmer conditions, summertime driving. Sure. What are the advantages from the consumer side?
It's funny, so we get that side of it where you're saying, you know, if you're towing with it or you get stuck in traffic in a hot day, you live in some southern states, really hot, temperatures build when you're stuck in traffic for a long period of time. It's not going to boil out on them. The temperatures still come up on them a little bit, but it's never a worry, it's never an issue. Once they get back going, temps come right back down. And then the bigger side of our sales point is probably for the preservation aspect of our coolant, where it's not going to cause any corrosion, electrolysis issues, anything like that. And it's a lifetime product for most of these cars that sit for long periods of time. As long as it doesn't get contaminated, it's going to last the life of the engine and help preserve their car.
Sounds like it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
Chris, how can people find out more information about your product and follow up and possibly make a purchase, or just to talk to somebody from Evans?
Well, you can go right to our website, evanscoolant.com. We have a lot of good tutorial videos on there, just information all together. There's our phone numbers, contacts, our tech site, and everything like that. You can certainly find us in all your local dealers, mostly speed shop driven, power sport related. If you're going online, you can find us in Summit, Jegs, Amazon. Those are our big players. But it's just a quick Google search. You can pretty much find the information pretty quick. But best site is the website. Obviously, we have the most information on there, and that's evanscoolant.com.
Now you've added to the prize pool today. So exactly what are our 4 classes of race winners going to get? Are they going to complete conversion package to set them up?
Yep, we're going to offer them a complete conversion package. We just have to know their quantities first. So obviously each car takes different quantities and different applications. So.
Well, welcome to the show. This is, as you can see, the turnout's been great. People have been by the booth all day, and I know the competitors speak highly of the people we've talked to. They love your product, so you're doing great things. Just got to get the word out there beyond the drag racing community.
That's it. Just keep doing what we're doing. Just keep getting the word out, and we're happy to be here and really enjoy it. So this is great.
Thanks for joining us, Chris from Evans Waterless Engine Coolant. I know we're looking forward to giving out your contingency prize along with the awards later today. We're going to be part of that, so make sure you get plenty of kudos for that. Thanks a lot, Chris.
All right,
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me today. We had a chance to catch up with Eli English, and we had a chance to talk about drag racing history. Anybody knows anything about drag racing knows it goes back to the 40s, post World War II. GIs coming home, they were tinkering on military stuff. They wanted something to do, and before you know it, all kinds of hot rods, rat rods, and that was really the genesis of the Orange Dragstrip Racing. And we're going to catch up with Eli English, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about him. All right, here we go, team. I'm joined here by Eli English. Eli's going to give us a little information about post-World War II drag racing and how the drag racing community really exploded after the GIs came back from the war and were looking for something to do. You know, they were professional tinkerers there in the military, and they just carried that into the private sector. A lot of what you see here today was developed that way through the Orange Dragstrip, active drag strip back in the 50s, and this is what we've progressed to today. And the nostalgia end of this is just out of control. And Eli English here has been dealing with these old race cars. We got a couple of them here. We're surrounded by race cars, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the history of post-World War II drag racing.
Well, what really happened is drag racing had kind of been around for generations before World War II, but it really took off when the GIs came back. They had learned a bunch of skills from being machine work or learning how to cast heads or intakes or make wheels or all different levels. So when they came home, they had this new set of skills, and they applied them to what they had already kind of started with back before they left. And the aftermarket exploded when they came back, and you had all these new companies come up like Edelbrock and Evans Heads, and all these companies were making all this speed equipment. It was available to the masses, basically. And it just grew into this big, giant industry that it is today. But it really all started back in the 40s, and it started with really simple cars like this one.
We'll get out of your way here a little bit, if you can kind of see what we got here quickly.
So like this car right here was built recently. We built it a couple of years ago. We built this car about 3 years ago to look like a car that was built back in the day. And then I started looking for real cars, and the car that is behind me was one that was actually built in 1947 by, believe it or not, by an 11-year-old kid. And he finished it when he was 13. So this car is 90% original, other than the actual engine block itself. Even the intake's original to the car, the starter's original to the car, even the starter cable's original to the car. So it was one of those deals that I really get involved in the history, and I kind of evolved my own business around building cars similar to this. Whether it be a rough car like this that's left as found, which is important too, so it's a learning pedestal for people to understand exactly how these cars were built back in the day. They were put together what they had. It was using coat hanger rods with a welder to weld it together, because they didn't have welders like we had. They had no MIG welders. They had torches and hacksaws. It was very, very archaic, simple tooling, but they were able to get it done. And some of the cars, are very iconic. This car has a bunch of really interesting features to it. It has a frame that's been turned inside out. It's channeled extremely heavy, which is a little bit ahead of its time for the day. But overall, it's a sense of nostalgia that it's a learning experience. This whole car is a learning experience. You look at it and you can see exactly how they did it, why they did it. It's rough, but it's cool. It has its own coolness.
Now, when you talk about the coolness, it's not just cool, but all three of these here are street legal, and they are not daily drivers, but they're drivable and safe in that regards.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, to have these cars totally functioning. They're inspectable. They're drivable. The brakes are all, everything's, even though it's all old or reproduction parts, like in the brakes and everything's new. It works. It stops. It goes good. And then you can kind of see the progression between this car and the one behind it. Whereas that car was built in 1959. It was just a little bit more evolved as a car. There's more to it. It's got, it's enclosed. It's a different type of car, granted, but if you look at the way it was put together very different than this car is. And it kind of shows the evolution between the 40s builds, where they were just starting out, and then the 50s builds as they progressed.
Now I see you're the owner of Traditional Speed and Custom, so you've developed a business around nostalgia car and custom cars, and talk a bit about that, and just talk about the people you meet in that kind of industry.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy what I do. We build real period correct traditional cars, mainly on a Ford platform. Basically, what I tell everybody is we do from like the early 20s up to the late 50s, and that's about it. We kind of stop at the muscle car era. A lot of flathead powered cars is kind of where I made my specialty. Kind of got my name out there for that. And it's interesting because there's a big market. 15 years ago, people would have walked by cars like this at a car show and just ignored they were there. Now people look at it and they're like, wow, this is so cool. It's just such, it stands out. And it's a whole kind of a new spin on this whole traditional revival, I guess would be a good word to put it. So.
And you're doing a great job carrying this on. I'm going to circle back around to something you said about this car right here. Purchased by an 11-year-old, and how long did it take him to complete it? And did he have it? What do you know about the 11-year-old's actual involvement?
So Buddy Hinman built the car through the internet. I was able to track him down, and we did it by going on the internet because the car's frame is inside out. A friend of mine posted a picture of the car, and someone recognized it literally within an hour. And by the end of that day, I was talking to Buddy Hinman himself on the phone, and the first question he asked me, he was like, well, does it have a leopard skin interior in it? And I was like, well, actually, the remnants of the leopard skin interior are in there. And he goes, well, was it green? I said, yes, it was green. And so he goes, that's my car then. So we were able to track back, when I bought the car, it had mismatched tires on it. So I was able to, he told me he had motorcycle tires on the front, and he had big truck tires on the back. So I was able to go off his recommendation and bring the car back to the way that he had it. He lost track of the car from 1955. So he built it when he was 11. In 47, he started. He finished it when he was 13. And then he traded it in 1953 for a 36 Ford Roadster. So, and I have pictures of both cars back then. And then after he knew the car he knew where it had been. And then 1955, he lost track of it, and he was amazed that it still existed when I called him. So
somehow it avoided the crusher all these years, and probably spent a considerable amount of time in a barn somewhere or a garage, and didn't see sunlight for a number of years, daylight. But you've done a great job just keeping this part of the industry alive, Eli. And like you say, 10 years ago, people wouldn't give a second look at something like this, but now it's one of the most popular types of displays that we see here at the show.
Yes, I agree. It's amazing the reception that it gets, and it's not for everybody, because recently I was out in Ohio at a car show, a big indoor show, and everyone was like, "Why are these cars here?" So it's kind of a regional thing. I think people are starting to understand, at least in this region, what the importance of the history is. And on a side note, the interesting thing is at one point in the 90s, this car was actually being used as a flower planter at a used car dealership in New Jersey. They had filled it full of dirt and they had flowers planted inside of it. And
the stories this car could tell.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So.
All right, Eli, I want to thank you so much for joining us here at the show today. It's been a great day up to this point. The weather, I like to call this Chamber of Commerce weather, and the three cars you bought here, the knowledge you brought today really adds to this type of show.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for joining us, Eli.
Probably the most common question I get asked is, will Evans make my engine run too hot? The answer is no. Because Evans has such a higher boiling point and not create that steam vapor pressure internally, you're always going to have a constant liquid to metal contact to draw heat. Once a water-based coolant boils, it turns to steam. Steam's going to force the coolant out of the passages, and the metals will have no way to dissipate heat at that point in time. Your coolant system has to have coolant in there in order for it to work. Limp mode is typically based off of a water-based coolant. The reason being, when the engine gets too hot, the water is going to start to boil. So limp mode kicks in, reduces your engine power, so it reduces heat, and it will allow your cooling system to catch up to itself. Because Evans coolant has such a higher boiling point, and it's always going to remain in a liquid state, even if you hit the limp mode, you're going to be able to still run safely and efficiently.
I'm Steve Manuel, and you're watching Classic Drive Television.
Welcome back. We've had a fantastic day here at the Orange Dragstrip Reunion on Classic Drive Television. Stephanie, a few thoughts.
It was an amazing day for races. The cars were fast, they were loud. It was a great family event. I got to bring a friend of mine this year to do some flagging with me, and that was incredible. I couldn't have asked for a better day.
Yeah, we have some people we have to thank. We couldn't have got on the track without the help of Richard Gonzalez, owner of this beautiful Classic Drive 55. Obviously, Wayne Farquhar, our driver, never saw the car until Saturday morning, along with Paul over at PK Machine, Pete, and a cast of thousands. We couldn't have done it without all those people. I'm Bill Thomas.
And I'm Stephanie Allison, and thanks for watching.